You're at a dinner with a few guys you grew up with. Same neighborhood, same schools, roughly the same starting point in life. And somewhere between the appetizers and the main course, the conversation drifts to money. Not directly. Men rarely talk about money directly, but you can feel it underneath everything. The guy across from you just bought a new house. The guy to your left is talking about his investments like he actually knows what he's doing, and you're sitting there, drink in hand, nodding along, doing the mental math on whether your card is going to decline if you order dessert. You look fine, you sound fine, but inside you know exactly where you stand, and it's not where you want to be. That moment, that quiet, uncomfortable awareness of your real financial position, that's what we're talking about today. My name is Smith, and I spend way too much time thinking about the specific financial journey that men go through and why so many of them get stuck at levels they were never meant to stay at. If you're someone who has a sense that you should be further along financially than you are right now, but you can't quite put your finger on what's missing or what the next step actually looks like, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, because today we're mapping the whole thing out. 5 levels, where most men are, why they're stuck there, and exactly what it takes to move up. Here's the thing about financial progress for men. It's almost never talked about honestly. What you get instead is either aspirational content that shows you the destination without the road, or generic advice that treats everyone like they're starting from the same place. Neither of those things actually helps you figure out where you are right now and what specifically you need to do next. So that's what this is, a map. Not a motivation speech, not a highlight reel, a map. And like any good map, it only works if you're honest about where you're standing on it. Let's start at the beginning. Level 1 is what I call survival mode. And if you're at level 1 right now, I want you to hear this clearly. There is no shame in it, but there is urgency. Because level 1 is the only level where your financial situation is genuinely dangerous on a day-to-day basis. Here's what level 1 looks like. Your income covers your expenses, but barely. You have no savings buffer. Your bank account hovers somewhere between $30 and $300 for most of the month. An unexpected expense, a car repair, a medical bill, a broken phone, sends you into credit card debt or puts you in the position of asking someone you know for money. You're not going backward necessarily, but you're not going forward either. You're just surviving the month. Now, here's a psychology of level 1 that most financial content completely ignores. The biggest danger at level 1 is not the lack of money, it's the mental state that comes with it. Research in behavioral economics, including work by Princeton economist Sendil Mullainathan, shows that financial scarcity literally consumes cognitive bandwidth. When you're worried about money constantly, your brain has significantly less mental capacity available for planning, decision-making, and long-term thinking. You're not bad with money at level 1. You're cognitively depleted by the stress of not having enough of it. And that depletion makes it harder to do the very things that would get you out. This is where it gets interesting, because the exit from level 1 is not what most people think it is. Most people think the exit is earning more money. And yes, income matters, but here's what most people don't realize. A lot of men at level 1 are already earning enough to move to level 2. The problem is that their expenses have perfectly matched their income, leaving nothing to work with. Every raise gets absorbed immediately into a slightly more expensive life. The technical term for this is lifestyle creep. The practical term is a trap. The exit from level 1 has two components. First, you need a buffer, not a full emergency fund yet, just a buffer. $1,000 sitting in a separate account that you do not touch. That single $1,000 will psychologically and practically change your relationship with money more than almost anything else you can do at the stage. It takes one category of financial stress, the what if something goes wrong this month stress, completely off the table. And when that cognitive load lifts even slightly, you start making better decisions. Second, you need to stop the income-expense synchronization. The moment any additional money hits your account, a raise, a bonus, a side job, a fixed percentage of it needs to go somewhere else than your lifestyle. 20% minimum, before you upgrade anything, before you celebrate anything. This is the habit that separates the men who move through level 1 and the men who spend a decade there. Level 2 is stability, and this is where a surprisingly large number of men live permanently without realizing they're stuck. At level 2, the financial panic is gone. You have an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of expenses saved, you're paying your bills on time, you have no high interest consumer debt, you might have a car payment or a mortgage, but you're managing them without stress. On paper, you're doing well. And if you asked most people around you, they'd say you have your finances together. Here's the thing. They're right compared to level 1, but level 2 has a specific and very common trap that keeps men there for years, sometimes decades. I call it the comfort plateau. The financial stress is gone, which means the urgency is gone, which means the motivation to push further is gone. You're comfortable, and comfortable in financial terms is where wealth goes to stop growing. The data on this is sobering. According to multiple household finance studies, the median American man in his 40s has approximately $93,000 in retirement savings. That sounds like something until you run the math. If you retire at 65 with $93,000 and withdraw the standard 4% annually, that's $3,720 per year in retirement income from savings per year. Social Security adds something, but the picture is still one of quiet, dignified financial struggle in the years when you should finally be free. These are not men who failed. These are men who reached level 2, stability, and then stopped, because stability felt like success, because there was no more immediate pain to motivate action, because the financial emergency was over, and the retirement crisis was still 30 years away and invisible. Now you might be thinking, Smith, at least they have savings. Plenty of people don't even make it to level 2. And yes, that's true. But here's what I need you to understand. Stability is not security. Stability is the absence of immediate crisis. Security is having enough invested and compounding that your money is working harder than you are. Level 2 has neither of those things. It just has the absence of panic, and the absence of panic is not the same as the presence of freedom. The move from level 2 to level 3 requires one thing above everything else. You have to decide that stability is not the destination. You have to deliberately create urgency when none naturally exists. The most practical way to do this is to calculate your retirement number. Take your desired annual retirement income, multiply it by 25. If you want $60,000 a year in retirement income, you need $1.5 million invested. Look at where you are right now. Feel the gap. That gap is your urgency. Now use it. Level 3 is what I call the growth phase, and this is where things genuinely start to change. At level 3, you're actively investing, not just contributing to a 401k because your employer set it up automatically, actually intentionally, strategically putting money to work. You understand at a basic level how compound interest functions and why time in the market matters more than almost any other variable. You're probably investing somewhere between 10 and 20% of your income. You have no high interest debt, your emergency fund is fully funded, and for the first time, your net worth is moving meaningfully upward month after month. Here's the psychology of level 3 that I find fascinating. This is the level where men start to feel the identity shift. Money stops being something that happens to you and starts being something you are actively managing. And with that shift comes a very specific and very dangerous temptation, the temptation to get clever. This is where it gets interesting. Level 3 is the level where most men make their most expensive financial mistakes, not because they're broke and desperate, but because they're confident and have something to lose. They start picking individual stocks because index funds feel too simple for someone at their level. They hear about a real estate deal or a startup investment from someone at a dinner party, and they put money into it that they can't afford to lose. They try to time the market. They chase returns. They confuse activity with progress. Research from investment analytics firm Dalbar shows consistently, across decades, that the average investor significantly underperforms the market they're invested in. Not because the market is unfair, but because average investors make emotional decisions. They buy high, they sell low, they chase last year's winners. And the men most likely to do this are the men who are smart enough to be confident, but not experienced enough to know how often confidence destroys returns. The rule at level 3 is brutal in its simplicity. Boring wins. A consistent investment into a broad market index fund, automated, so you never have the option to emotionally override it, left completely alone for decades, will outperform the vast majority of clever strategies that men at level 3 are tempted to pursue. The path from level 3 upward is not about finding smarter investments. It's about protecting your simple, boring, brilliant investment strategy from your own worst impulses. The other critical move at level 3 is income growth. Investing 20% of $50,000 is $10,000 a year. Investing 20% of $150,000 is $30,000 a year. The math of compounding is exponential, which means the amount you start with and add each year matters enormously. At level 3, you need to be aggressively developing skills, pursuing promotions, building side income, or all three simultaneously. The investment habit is in place. Now you need to increase the fuel going into the engine. Level 4 is what I call financial momentum. And this is where the game genuinely changes in a way that most men never experience. At level 4, your investments have compounded long enough that they are generating meaningful returns on their own. We're talking a portfolio somewhere in the range of $250,000 to $750,000, depending on your age and timeline. At this level, a 7% annual return, which is conservative for a diversified equity portfolio over the long term, generates $17,500 to $52,500 per year in portfolio growth before you add a single dollar of new investment. Your money is now doing real work, not supplementary work, real, significant, life-changing work. This is what most people don't realize about level 4. It's the level where the compound interest you read about in books stops being theoretical and starts being viscerally, emotionally real. You start to feel the momentum. You start to understand in your bones, rather than just your head, why the wealthy keep getting wealthier without proportionally working harder. Because at a certain portfolio size, the market's annual return alone generates more wealth than most people earn in a year of work. You have crossed into different economic territory. Now look, I want to be clear about the timeline here, because this is where a lot of men get discouraged. Getting to level 4 takes time. If you start investing $1,000 a month at 30 years old into a diversified portfolio with an average 10% annual return, you hit $250,000 around age 41, 11 years of disciplined investing. That's not a short time. But here's the alternative. Those same 11 years pass regardless of whether you invest or not. The question is only whether you arrive at 41 with momentum or without it. The psychological challenge at level 4 is patience and protection. Patience because the compounding feels slow at the beginning and then suddenly feels fast, and most men give up during the slow part. And protection because at level 4 you finally have something substantial to lose, which makes you vulnerable to panic selling during market downturns, to safe investments that actually just preserve capital without growing it, and to lifestyle inflation that starts eroding the gap between income and investment that got you here. The move from level 4 to level 5 is not about a new strategy or a secret insight. It's about staying the course long enough and aggressively enough that the math of compounding does what it is mathematically obligated to do. Level 5 is financial freedom, and I want to define this very precisely because it gets confused and romanticized in ways that make it seem further away than it is. Financial freedom is not being a billionaire. Financial freedom is not living on a yacht. Financial freedom, in the most practical and meaningful definition, is reaching the point where your invested assets generate enough annual return to cover your living expenses, permanently, without depleting the principal. The technical benchmark used by financial planners is the 4% rule. If your annual expenses represent 4% or less of your total portfolio, you are financially free. Your money will sustain you indefinitely. So if you spend $60,000 a year, you need $1.5 million invested. If you spend $80,000 a year, you need $2 million invested. These are real numbers that real people hit, not lottery winners, not tech founders, regular men who made consistent financial decisions over 1 to 2 decades and let compounding do its work. Here's the thing about level 5 that nobody tells you, and this is the part I think about the most. Financial freedom is not primarily about the money. The money is the mechanism. What financial freedom actually gives you is the single most valuable resource in human existence: optionality, the ability to choose, to work because you want to, not because you have to say no to opportunities that don't excite you, to take risks in your career or your business from a position of security rather than desperation, to be present with your family without the background radiation of financial stress constantly running beneath every moment. That is what you are actually building toward. Not a number, a life where you are the author of your choices rather than the prisoner of your obligations. So, where are you right now? Level 1, surviving month to month with no buffer and constant financial stress. Level 2, stable but comfortable and quietly going nowhere. Level 3, actively investing but tempted by complexity and not growing your income aggressively enough. Level 4, feeling the momentum but struggling with patience and protecting the progress. Or level 5, free. Most men watching this are at level 2 or level 3, and the move between levels is never about information. You now have the information. It's about decision. The decision to stop treating stability as a destination. The decision to automate your investments before your lifestyle has a chance to absorb the money. The decision to aggressively grow your income because the percentage matters less than the absolute number at a certain point. The decision to be boring and consistent when everything in you wants to be clever and exciting. Here's what I want you to do right now, today, before this video is even finished. Identify your level. Be honest, not with me, with yourself. Then identify the single most important action that moves you one level up. Not 5 levels, 1 level. If you're at level 1, open a separate savings account and commit to getting $1,000 into it within 60 days. If you're at level 2, calculate your retirement number today and set up an automatic investment that goes out the day after your paycheck lands. If you're at level 3, audit your portfolio for complexity and consider whether the clever strategy is actually outperforming what a simple index fund would have done. If you're at level 4, run your 4% number and see how far you actually are from the finish line. You might be closer than you think. The 5 levels are not a life sentence. They're a map, and maps only exist so you can figure out where you are and start moving. Every man who ever reached level 5 started at level 1. The only difference between them and the men who stayed stuck is that they kept moving. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but consistently, deliberately, and honestly. Your level is not your identity. It's just your current position, and positions change.